Vladimir Pravdich-Neminsky. Vladimir Pravdich-Neminsky, Russian. Vladimir Vladimirovich Pravdich-Nemінський, Ukrainian. Volodymyr Volodimirovich Pravdich-Немінський, 2 July 1879, 17 May 1952, was Ukrainian and then Soviet physiologist who published the first EEG and the evoked potential of the mammalian brain. He was a representative of Kiev Physiological School. He was a victim of Soviet repressions. Life. Family. Vladimir Pravdich-Neminsky was born in Kyiv in Polish-Ukrainian aristocratic family of Neminsky of Pravdich coat of arms. His father Volodymyr Stanislavovich had a rank of active state councillor. He owned 309 desiatins per 320 hectares or 850 acres of farmland in Ivashkivsy village in Podolia Governorate. In the beginning of Roman 20th century, he lent it to local farmers. Little is known of Volodymyr Stanislavovich origin. There was an officer called Stanislav Neminsky born 1809 in Russian Caucasian Army in 1849, but it is unknown whether he is of any relation to Volodymyr. In 1901–1911 Volodymyr Stanislavovich worked as an officer in a chancery of Kiev Land Bank. In 1899 he owned a house at Mikhailivska Street 17. Later in 1909–1911 his address moved to Prozorivska Street 6, now Esplanadna. The building was demolished. Family also owned a countryside house in Kyiv suburb Pushcha Viditsia. Volodymyr Stanislavovich also had a brother, Nikolai, who was also accountant officer in Kiev Land Bank. He was a member of Russian nationalist organization Union of the Russian People in Kyiv. While Bolsheviks occupied Kyiv in 1919, he was executed by Cheka on May 25. Possibly to avoid connotation with his uncle Volodymyr Jr. changed his surname to Pravdich-Nemінський. Mother of Volodymyr Volodimirovich was Anna Yehimivna, who owned a house in Kyiv downtown at Malopidvalna 17, close to Mikhailivska 17. There were another son in the family, Pavlo, of whom nothing is known except he was missing during the Ukrainian-Soviet War. Study. Volodymyr was attending First Kyiv Emperor Gymnasium. It was the most prestigious high school in Kyiv in that time. He graduated from it in 1900 and entered medical department of Kazan University a year later. In 1902, he moved to Natural Sciences section of Physics and Mathematics department, improve his knowledge in chemistry and biology. Volodymyr twice took part in students' demonstrations and twice was repressed for it, so finished his course late. In 1903 he came back to Kyiv to enter Natural Sciences section of Physics and Mathematics department of Kyiv University, which he was graduated from in 1907 with I-grade diploma in chemistry. In 1907 Volodymyr studied physical chemistry in lab of Kyiv Polytechnics Institute in laboratory of Volodymyr Timofeyev and Volodymyr Plotnikov. With the latter he made friends and their friendship lasted for many years. He authored one chapter in Plotnikov's doctoral thesis and had a publication on electrolysis of aluminum bromide compounds with toluene and benzene. These chemistry studies improved Neminsky's knowledge of chemical processes, which he widely used in further research. Sometime being in the university, Volodymyr married Alexandra Ludwigovna. They had 2 daughters. In Kyiv University. In 1908 Neminsky enters physiology lab in Kiev University. Since 1910 Vasil Chegovets took the chair of physiology. Vasil Chegovets 1873–1941 was Ukrainian and Russian physiologist. He studied in Emperor's Military Medical Academy in St. Petersburg in laboratory of Ivan Sechenov student physiologist Ivan Tarknishvili. In 1910, he was elected chair of physiology in medical department of Kiev University, which he held till university close-up in 1920 and till 1935 in newly created Kyiv Medical Institute. Nothing is known of Vladimir-Neminsky research in physiology before Chegovitz, as none of this was published. Possibly there was nothing important, as he had to teach in gymnasium to support himself. Neminsky was a teacher of geography and natural science in 6th Kyiv Gymnasium around 1909. But in 1910 Chegovitz arrived and immediately applied for funding for improvement of physiology equipment. He got 20,000 golden rubles a per $10,000 of that time, which with inflation correction means almost $250,000 in modern US dollars, and bought the most novel German equipment: galvanometers, kymograph, rheostats, microscopes, timers, etc. He organized modern animal operation clinics taken as the specimen Pavlov's lab. With newly bought equipment, Neminsky eagerly started his experiments. He used recently invented Einthoven string galvanometer to record brain and muscle electrical signals. As a result of his research, Neminsky published 2 papers in then well-known German journals Archive for Physiology and Zentralblatt for Physiology, later merged into what we know now as P. Pfluger's Archive. Both were issued in 1913. First was a description of action currents in central nervous system of a frog. Another was historical work of non-invasive electric measuring on dog's brain. He found spontaneous electric fluctuations which he showed independent of blood pressure and peripheral nerves' electric activity. Wars and Revolutions. In 1914-1917 Neminsky continued to teach in gymnasium and Kyiv Realschule, and in 1915 entered 3-year course of medical department of Kyiv University. While he graduated with excellent doctor diploma, was already 1917, the year of Russian and Ukrainian national revolutions. It was also the 4th year of World War I, and a lot of educated people entered volunteer organization called All Russian Union of Towns, which helped wounded and refugees of war to survive. Volodymyr Neminsky joined Union of Towns as a volunteer doctor immediately after graduating and worked there till the end of the war in 1918. In 1918, he also starts research on mechanisms of fatigue in Laboratory of Pathology in Kyiv University, unfortunately, never published. This was a time of frequent 15 times in a 3 years authority changes. Ukrainian Central Rada was overtaken by Bolsheviks in January 1918, while German troops occupied Kiev in March, supporting Ukrainian government, General Skoropadsky. In December, Germans retreated as the World War Roman II finished and Skoropadsky fell under pressure of Ukrainian Socialist Petliura. In February 1919, Soviets enter the city again, organizing massacre of their political opponents, including Volodymyr Neminsky's uncle Nikolai. In August, United Forces of Ukrainian Army. In May and June 1920, Kiev was taken for a short time by Union of Polish and Ukrainian armies, after which Soviet regime was established constantly. For Volodymyr Neminsky, it was a time of great dangers. Russian-speaking nobility of Polish-Ukrainian descent could be an aim to different forces. In this period he changes his name, adding Pravdich, possibly to hide his family relation to killed uncle. As epidemics of typhus spread, Neminsky was mobilized by Bolsheviks in 1919 to fight it in Bacteriology Institute. He conducted wide clinical investigations which were not published, as well as his other works of this period. Later on he was sent by the Soviets to the 12th Red Army as ordinator doctor of evacuation hospital. There he fell sick with typhus himself. There are some little understandable reasons which took Neminsky away from Chegovitz. But nevertheless there were no other works except mentioned above co-authored by great physiologists. Neither are not known any interaction between them in following years. Neminsky came back to university shortly in 1918–1919, though not to Chagovit's lab but to Lindemann's. Later he worked in polytechnics, Ukrainian Academy of Sciences, Agricultural Institute, Institute of Child's and Mother's Health, but never in Kyiv Medical Institute, where Chagovitz remained until his retirement in 1936. Life in USSR. During Ukrainian-Soviet War in 1919, he was mobilized to Red Army to fight epidemic typhus while he fell ill too. In 1922–1929, he worked in different research institutions in Ukraine. In late 1929, he was arrested and sentenced to 3 years' prison in Arkhangelsk. Later in 1932–1944, he was teaching physiology in a few colleges and universities, being every time fired and accused as a member of old regime bourgeois intellectuals. In 1949, Pravdich-Neminsky was allowed to live and work in Moscow, which meant all accusations were taken off. He was a head in Laboratory of Cerebrography of USSR Academy of Sciences until death. Works. Pravdich-Nemінський VV. Einversuch der Registrierung der elektrischen Gehirnerscheinungen. ZBL Physiol 27, 951–960, 1913. Pravdich-Nemінський. Sur la connaissance du rythme d'innervation. Journ. De Med. Dekaterinus Law NR. 1314. 1923. Pravdich-Nemінський WW. Zur Kenntnis der Elektrischen und der Innervationsvorgänge in den funktionellen Elementen und Geweben des tierischen Organismus. Elektrocerebrogramm der Sowjetier. Pflug Arch Ges Physiol 209, 362, 382. 1925 doi 10. 1007/B phone 730,925. Pravdich-Nemінський WW. Zur Kenntnis der Elektrischen und der Innervationsvorgänge in den funktionellen Elementen und Geweben des tierischen Organismus. Pflug Arch Ges Physiol 207, 1, 671, 690. 1925 doi 10. 1007/B phone 740,394. Pravdich-Nemінський WW. Anstelle Methode der fraktionierten Blutgerinnungsbestimmung. 1927 doi 10. 1007/B F 2,622,816. Pravdich-Nemінський WW. Zur Kenntnis der Elektrischen und der Innervationsvorgänge in den funktionellen Elementen und Geweben des tierischen Organismus. Pflug Arch Ges Physiol 209, 1, 362, 382. 1925 doi 10. 1007/B phone 722,884. Pravdich-Nemінський VV 1951. Tonolectrocerebrogram. Clady Academy Knock SSSR. 79-6, 1061–1064. PMIT 14,860,077. Pravdich-Nemінський VV 1951. Structural modifications in the nerve during exposure to direct current. Structural modifications in the nerve during exposure to direct current. Clady Academy Knock SSSR. 78-3, 397–399. PMID 14,840,314. Elektrocerebrographia, Elektromyografia I znaczenie inov ammonia v жизненных процессах organisma. 1958.